She chose him. Then his power left the alien queen in awe. HFY Sci-Fi Story. HFY Stories. The planet Calvoria was the stage for one of the most important peace talks in the galaxy. The Vreeth, an ancient and powerful alien species, were in the process of deciding whether or not to ally with humanity. Their queen, Urundel, had always seen humans as weak and unimportant compared to her own advanced race. But Earth's recent advances in space exploration had caught her attention. Though still small players on the galactic stage, humans had something others, an unshakable will to survive. Callum was one of Earth's youngest diplomats, chosen for his quick thinking and charm. His mission was to convince the Vreeth that humanity could be a valuable ally, a force to be reckoned with. He was nervous. This was his first major diplomatic mission, and the Vreeth were known for their cold, calculating demeanor. They had conquered countless civilizations over the centuries, and human history had shown no signs of being a match for their might. The meeting was held in the Grand Hall of Calvoria's capital, a towering structure made of dark stone and shimmering alien technology. Callum's eyes wandered around the room, taking in the alien architecture and the strange patterns carved into the walls. The Vreeth were seated on elevated thrones, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. Queen Urundel was seated at the highest throne, her silver armor reflecting the light of the distant stars. She was a striking figure, tall and imposing, with a presence that seemed to fill the room. Callum stood before the Vreeth leaders, trying to keep his hands from shaking. He cleared his throat and began to speak, explaining Earth's position and the potential benefits of an alliance. His voice was steady, but inside he was panicking. The Vreeth were silent, watching him with calculating eyes. Every word he spoke felt like it was being weighed and measured. When he finished, there was a long silence. Queen Urundel was the first to speak, her voice cool and composed. "You speak of humanity's potential," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "But what proof do you have that your species is worth our time?" Callum had expected this question. It was the reason he was here, after all. He had spent months preparing for this moment, learning everything he could about the Vreeth and their history. He took a deep breath and spoke from his heart. "We may not have your technology or your age-old wisdom," Callum said, "but we have something no other species has. We have the ability to adapt, to overcome. We don't give up. Even when faced with impossible odds, we push forward." Urundel's glowing eyes narrowed as she regarded him. She was intrigued, but she wasn't ready to show it. To her, humans were still just a species trying to survive in a galaxy that would crush them without a second thought. "You speak highly of your species," she said slowly. "But words are meaningless. Actions speak louder. If you wish to prove yourself to us, you will need to demonstrate your worth." Callum didn't flinch. He had been expecting this. The Vreeth didn't believe in empty words, they demanded action. But what action could he take to prove humanity's worth to a species as powerful as the Vreeth? Before he could think of an answer, the room seemed to shift. Urundel stood, her form towering over him. "I will test you," she declared, her voice commanding. "You will undergo the trial of the Vreeth. If you survive, perhaps I will consider your offer." A chill ran down Callum's spine. The trial of the Vreeth was a legendary test, known across the galaxy for breaking even the most powerful beings. It wasn't just a test of physical strength, but of mental endurance and resolve. Few had ever survived. He knew he had no choice. If he refused, it would mean the end of the negotiations, and possibly humanity's future in the galaxy. "I accept," he said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. Urundel's lips curled into a faint smile. "Very well. The trial will begin at dawn." The first light of dawn had barely touched the cold, alien skies of Calvoria when Callum found himself standing at the edge of a massive arena. He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with thoughts of the trial. What would it be like? Would he survive? Would he die trying? Every worst-case scenario ran through his mind, but he pushed them aside. He had to focus. There was no room for doubt. The arena stretched out before him, a vast expanse of hard stone and strange, glowing symbols that pulsed with an energy he couldn't comprehend. At the far end stood Queen Urundel, flanked by her advisors, watching him with an intensity that made his heart pound in his chest. Her eyes, glowing like twin stars, seemed to pierce through him, reading his every thought, every fear. "You've chosen to accept the trial," Urundel's voice rang out, sharp and unwavering. "Then prove yourself." Callum nodded, though he wasn't sure what he was supposed to prove. His body felt stiff, the cold air biting at his skin, but he knew he had no choice. He had to show Urundel and the entire galaxy that humanity wasn't something to be dismissed. Without warning, the ground beneath him trembled and a low, rumbling sound filled the air. Callum's breath caught in his throat as a massive wall of stone began to rise from the ground, separating him from the Queen and her audience. A barrier. His heart raced. Was this part of the trial? He didn't have long to wonder, because as soon as the wall finished rising, the ground in front of him split open, and from the darkness below, something began to emerge. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature had the body of a serpent, its scales shimmering like molten metal, but its head was something out of a nightmare. The creature's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its jaws were lined with sharp teeth, each one larger than Callum's fist. It hissed, its long, sinuous body coiling as it advanced toward him. Callum took a step back, his pulse racing. This was no ordinary creature. It was a beast of unimaginable power, and it was heading straight for him. He had no weapons, no armor. He was alone, standing in the middle of an alien arena, facing a monster that could kill him in seconds. His mind raced. What could he do? He was just a human diplomat, not a warrior. He didn't know how to fight. But then he remembered what he had said to Urundel. Humanity's strength was in its ability to adapt. He had to think. He had to survive. The creature lunged at him, its massive jaws snapping shut with a deafening crack. Callum barely dodged, throwing himself to the side just in time. He landed hard on the stone ground, pain shooting through his arm, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, and glanced around for any way to defend himself. There was nothing. The arena was barren, except for the creature and the rising stone walls that separated him from any help. The creature hissed again, its glowing eyes narrowing as it prepared for another strike. Callum's breath came in shallow gasps. His mind raced, but his body felt frozen. He couldn't move fast enough. He couldn't think fast enough. But then something clicked. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or power. It was the ability to learn, to think, to outsmart its opponents. Callum remembered the stories he had heard about ancient human warriors, about how they used their wits to defeat enemies far stronger than themselves. The creature was fast, but it wasn't invincible. It was predictable. As the beast lunged again, Callum leaped to the side, his body moving instinctively. The creature crashed into the stone wall with a tremendous force, its head slamming against the surface. Callum didn't waste any time. He ran, his legs pumping beneath him, and he scrambled up the wall of the arena, using every bit of his strength to climb higher. The creature, disoriented from the impact, tried to recover, but Callum was already above it. He reached down and grabbed a loose piece of rock from the arena's edge, then hurled it at the creature. The rock struck it square in the eye, and the beast recoiled with a deafening roar, thrashing in pain. Callum didn't wait to see if it would recover. He knew this was his chance. With one final burst of energy, he jumped from the edge of the arena, landing directly behind the creature. Before it could turn, he grabbed its long, serpentine tail and used all his strength to yank it to the ground. The creature hissed, its fangs bared, but Callum was faster now. He had learned, adapted, and he wasn't about to let fear stop him. With a swift, precise motion, He grabbed the beast's head and slammed it against the stone floor, knocking it unconscious. The arena fell silent. For a moment, Callum could only hear his own ragged breath, his chest rising and falling in great, desperate gasps. He stood there, his body trembling with adrenaline, staring down at the defeated creature. He couldn't believe it. He had done it. He had survived. Suddenly, the stone walls of the arena began to retract, and Queen Erendil's voice echoed through the space. "Well done, human," she said, her voice filled with something Callum couldn't quite place, admiration perhaps, or maybe surprise. "You have passed the first trial." Callum stood, his legs weak beneath him. He had faced death, and somehow he had survived. The beast was defeated, but he knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more tests. But for the first time since he had arrived, he allowed himself to feel a small sense of victory. Queen Erendil descended from her throne, walking toward him. As she drew closer, Callum could see the faintest glimmer of respect in her eyes. It was not the expression of a queen who had seen countless battles and conquerors, but something new, something unexpected. "You are not what I expected," she said, her voice low. "But perhaps there is more to humanity than I realized." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Callum allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had a chance to prove humanity's worth. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about showing the galaxy that humans were capable of greatness. And he had just begun. The air was thick with anticipation as Callum stood in the heart of the arena, his body aching from the battle with the beast. Sweat trickled down his forehead, mixing with the dust of the arena floor. His heart was still racing, but his mind had already shifted focus. He had survived the first trial, but there was no time to rest. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. The Vreeth were watching, and Queen Erendil was not a ruler known for showing mercy. As the last echoes of the defeated creature's roar faded, the walls of the arena began to shift once more. Callum, still panting from his previous struggle, stood tall, determined to face whatever came next. Queen Erendil's eyes were fixed on him, glowing with an intensity that seemed to pierce through him. She said nothing, but there was something in her gaze, something Callum couldn't quite place. Was it respect? Or was it simply the cold calculation of a ruler observing the performance of a subject? Without warning, the ground trembled again. Callum had no time to react as the floor beneath his feet cracked open, revealing a series of platforms suspended high above the arena. The platforms were connected by thin, glowing bridges made of energy, a network of pathways leading into a dizzying expanse of nothingness. Callum's eyes widened. This was no longer just about surviving a physical battle. This was something different, a test of his mind, his courage, and his ability to face fear itself. He had never experienced anything like this before. His instincts screamed at him to hesitate, to wait, but he knew there was no time to think. The trial was far from over. "Move," Erendil's voice cut through the silence, commanding but not unkind. "The second trial begins now." Without another word, she gestured toward the platforms, and they began to shift and move, the glowing bridges pulsating with energy. The challenge had begun. Callum swallowed his fear and stepped onto the nearest platform. The stone beneath his boots was cool to the touch, and it felt solid, but the expanse below him was anything but reassuring. The air felt thick, as though gravity itself was weighing him down. He took a deep breath and focused, placing one foot in front of the other. The first bridge was narrow, barely wide enough for him to stand. His heart raced as he glanced at the dizzying drop beneath him. One wrong step, and he would fall into the unknown. But there was no room for fear. He had to move forward. As he made his way across the glowing bridge, his mind raced with thoughts of the creature he had just defeated. It had been massive, powerful, and terrifying, but now, in this new challenge, it felt like a distant memory. The real test, he realized, was not just surviving the trials but proving that humanity could adapt to any situation, no matter how strange or dangerous. He could feel it in his bones. The need to prove himself was stronger than the fear of the unknown. Halfway across the bridge, the air shifted. A deep, guttural growl echoed from the darkness below him, and before he could react, something massive surged upward from the abyss. A shadow moved faster than his eyes could track, and suddenly, Callum found himself face to face with another creature, this one even larger than the first. It was a gargantuan, four-legged beast, with talons as long as Callum's arms and eyes that burned with fiery rage. The creature leapt toward him, its jaws wide, but Callum didn't hesitate. He had learned from his first encounter. He knew how to think, how to adapt, and how to use his surroundings. Instead of freezing in terror, he jumped sideways, rolling onto the next platform just as the creature's claws grazed the edge of the bridge. The force of its attack caused the platform beneath him to shudder, but he managed to stay on his feet. The creature didn't relent. It roared, its massive body blocking the narrow path between Callum and the next platform. Callum's eyes darted around, searching for a way out. The creature's eyes locked onto him, and its growl vibrated in the air. It was fast, faster than the first one. If he stayed here, he wouldn't make it to the next platform. He had to move. Callum took a deep breath, his mind racing. The answer came to him in an instant. The bridge wasn't just for crossing, it was a weapon. He knew he had to use it to his advantage. As the creature lunged again, Callum dove to the side, narrowly avoiding its claws. The beast's momentum carried it forward, and just as it was about to crash into the edge of the platform, Callum reached out, grabbing the edge of the bridge. He pulled with all his strength, and the platform shifted, tilting sharply. The creature, unprepared for the sudden change in its environment, stumbled, its massive body teetering over the edge. With one final push, Callum swung himself back onto the platform, watching as the creature fell into the abyss below. It howled in fury as it vanished into the darkness. Callum stood there, panting, his body covered in sweat. The danger had passed, but he knew it wasn't over. The trial was far from finished. As he continued across the platforms, more challenges arose. Strange creatures, alien landscapes, and obstacles designed to test his every move appeared before him. But with each one, Callum found himself adapting faster, thinking more clearly, moving with a confidence he had never known before. The trials were pushing him to his limits, but with each step, he realized he wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. Arundel watched from the shadows, her eyes never leaving Callum. She had seen many beings try and fail in this arena, but there was something different about this human, something that set him apart. She had expected him to falter by now, to break under the pressure, but instead, he was proving himself in ways she hadn't anticipated. For the first time, Arundel found herself intrigued. Callum was not just a diplomat, he was more than that. He was showing her the true strength of humanity, not through brute force, but through his ability to adapt, to think, to rise to every challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. As Callum reached the final platform, the challenges came to a halt. He stood at the edge of the arena, looking out over the vast expanse that stretched before him. He had made it. He had faced every test and come out victorious. His heart pounded in his chest and his body ached, but he had done it. He had passed the second trial. The stone walls of the arena shifted once more, and Arundel's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "You have completed the second trial, human," she said. "You have proven yourself in ways few could, but this is not the end. The final trial awaits you." Callum's breath caught in his throat. He had survived 2 trials, but he knew that the final one would be the hardest. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. He had to finish what he had started. He had to prove that humanity was more than just a species trying to survive. It was a species that could conquer anything it set its mind to. The final trial loomed ahead like a shadow in Callum's mind, its weight pressing down on him. He had already faced creatures that could tear a man apart with ease, navigated treacherous bridges suspended over endless abysses, and survived challenges that seemed designed to break him. But as he stood at the edge of the last platform, staring out into the unknown, he knew this would be the hardest test of all. Queen Arundel's gaze from above remained fixed on him, her eyes glowing with an intensity that made Callum feel like he was being sized up, examined like an insect under a magnifying glass. He had proven his strength, his wits, and his courage. But now he had to prove something else, something deeper, something that could define the future of humanity. The platforms had come to a halt, leaving Callum standing in the center of the arena with nothing but the vast, dark expanse before him. It was eerily quiet, the silence only broken by his shallow breaths. The air seemed heavy, and the ground beneath him felt more like quicksand than solid stone. "Human," Arundel's voice echoed through the stillness, commanding yet strangely calm. "You have come far, but this trial is different. This test will challenge not just your body, but your very soul. Prepare yourself." Callum's pulse quickened. He didn't know what to expect, but something told him this trial would test him in ways he hadn't anticipated. His hands were shaking, but he forced himself to remain still. He had already survived the impossible. He couldn't back down now. Without any further warning, the air around him shimmered, and the ground seemed to crack open once again. This time, instead of another creature, something else emerged, an image. It was Arundel, but not the regal queen who had observed him from her throne. This version of her was different. She was kneeling, vulnerable, her once confident eyes filled with a look of desperation. She reached out as if pleading for help. "Help me," the illusion of Arundel said, her voice trembling with fear. "Please help me." Callum blinked, taken aback. Was this real? Was this another test? His mind raced, and for a moment he thought about retreating. But then he remembered what had brought him here. He wasn't just surviving. He was proving that humanity could overcome anything, even the darkest of challenges. The illusion of Arundel's outstretched hand seemed to grow, pulling him toward her. He could hear her voice echoing louder now, a faint cry for mercy, but he couldn't tell if it was real or part of the trial. "Don't fall for it," he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. "Stay focused." But the image of Arundel grew more intense. It felt like it was pulling him in, urging him to give in, to step forward and offer his help. He knew it wasn't real. It couldn't be. But his instincts told him that this trial was about more than just resisting illusions. It was testing his empathy, his ability to trust his instincts and not be swayed by false appearances. Callum shook his head, trying to clear the thoughts swirling in his mind. He took a step back, and the image of Arundel flickered. It disappeared into the air like smoke, only to be replaced by another. This time it was a version of himself. It was a reflection of Callum, standing with his back turned, gazing out over a vast, endless void. "You could have everything," the reflection said, its voice eerily calm, as if it was tempting him with promises of glory, power, and greatness. "You could rule the galaxy. All it takes is a single step in the right direction." The image of himself turned, smiling in a way that was unnerving. Callum's stomach churned. This wasn't just an illusion of a future, it was an embodiment of his own darkest desires. He wanted to succeed. He wanted to prove himself to the Vreeth, to Arundel, and to everyone who had doubted humanity's potential. But was this what he truly wanted? The idea of power, control, or dominance was alluring, but was that the reason he had accepted this trial? Callum could feel his heart pounding. This was the test, he realized, the test of his integrity. The trial wasn't about strength or even survival. It was about choosing the right path, even when it seemed so easy to take the wrong one. "You are only human," the reflection said, its voice soft and almost coaxing. "All it takes is one decision, one mistake, and the galaxy will be yours." He knew this wasn't real. The reflection was a manifestation of everything that could go wrong, of the darkness that existed inside him. The temptation was there, strong and persistent. But Callum wasn't like that. Humanity wasn't like that. They had faced hardships, yes, but they had also risen above them together. Taking a deep breath, Callum turned away from the reflection. He had a mission, and that mission was bigger than power, bigger than glory. It was about something much more important, about showing that humanity was more than just a species trying to survive. It was about being the best version of himself, no matter the cost. "Enough!" Callum shouted, his voice echoing through the empty space. "I choose my path." The reflection of himself shattered like glass, disintegrating into nothingness. For a moment, the world around him seemed to freeze in place. The silence was almost deafening. Then, the air shifted again, and the dark expanse before him began to brighten. The images faded and the weight in his chest lifted. The final trial was over. The ground beneath him stabilized and he felt the energy around him change. It wasn't just the test of strength or survival. It was the test of the human spirit, his spirit. And he had passed. Not because he was the strongest or the smartest, but because he had remained true to himself. Queen Earendil's voice, rich and powerful, filled the air once more. "You have passed the final trial, human," she said. Her tone was different now, not cold, not calculating, but something new, something resembling respect. "You have shown the strength of your heart, your mind, and your spirit. You are more than what I expected." Callum's chest swelled with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. He had done it. He had faced down the temptations, the fears, and the darkness within him. He had proven himself not just to Eärendil, but to himself. From above, the Vreath Queen descended, her imposing figure standing tall as she walked toward him. Her eyes were no longer cold and calculating, but warm, filled with an emotion Callum could not quite name. "You are not just a diplomat, Callum," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "You are the future of humanity." Callum didn't know what to say. He had come here unsure of his place, but now he knew. He wasn't just surviving this trial. He was shaping the future, proving that humanity could rise above the challenges it faced. Eärendil raised her hand, and the energy around them shifted, the arena disappearing as if it was never there. The stars above glimmered in the distance, and for the first time since arriving, Callum felt a sense of peace. "You have earned my respect," Eärendil said. "And in time, you will earn the respect of the galaxy. Humanity will not be underestimated again." With those words, Callum knew that the journey had only just begun. The trials had tested his body, mind, and spirit, but now they had opened the door to something greater, a future where humanity could stand proudly among the stars. The weight of the trials had finally lifted from Callum's shoulders as he stood before Queen Eärendil. The arena had vanished, and the vast expanse of the stars stretched out before him. He could see the entire galaxy, its countless planets and moons glittering in the distance. For the first time since arriving on Calvoria, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. The trials had tested him in ways he hadn't expected, but now it was over. At least, that's what he thought. But Queen Eärendil's gaze, now softened and filled with something that resembled respect, told him that the true journey was only just beginning. "You have passed all the trials, human," she said, her voice rich with authority but lacking the coldness it once held. "But now, you must face the most important challenge of all, the choice that will determine humanity's place in the galaxy." Callum's heart skipped a beat. A choice? What did she mean? He had already proven himself, survived creatures, navigated deadly platforms, and even resisted temptations that could have led him astray. What more could be asked of him? "What choice?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with confusion. Eärendil's gaze held his, unwavering and intense. "The choice to lead or to follow. Humanity has shown it can survive, but the question now is, will you rise above the others or remain as a follower, a species that clings to the shadows of those more powerful?" The words hit Callum harder than he expected. To lead or to follow. He had never considered himself a leader, just a diplomat trying to make peace. But now, standing here in the heart of the galaxy, facing a queen who had tested his every strength, he realized that this was more than a simple question. It was the foundation of humanity's future. Queen Arundel stepped closer, her presence towering over him and her voice lowered, becoming almost a whisper. "You have seen the power of other species, Callum. You have felt their strength, their wisdom, and their fear. But humanity is different. It has something that no other species possesses, the ability to evolve, to adapt, to overcome. Will you take that power and lead your people, or will you let others decide your fate?" The question echoed in Callum's mind. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't just about winning the trials. It was about what humanity could become. Could he, a single human, stand as a symbol of that potential? Could he help lead humanity to a future where it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the great species of the galaxy? For a long moment, Callum stood there, his mind racing. He thought of Earth, of the people he had left behind, the families, the friends, the colleagues who depended on him. He thought of the future of humanity, of how it could shape its destiny. Finally he spoke, his voice steady and strong. "I will lead. I will help humanity rise, not just to survive but to thrive. We will prove that we are more than what the galaxy expects of us." Arundel's eyes flickered with something, pride perhaps. "Then you have made the right choice. The galaxy is full of challenges, Callum, but humanity will no longer face them alone." As her words settled in the air, something changed. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, and the sense of weightlessness that had filled the arena seemed to fade. A new energy filled the space, an energy that wasn't just from the galaxy around them but from something deeper. Callum realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. Arundel took a step back, her hands folded behind her back. "You have earned the respect of the Vreeth, Callum. Your trials were not just tests of strength or intellect, they were tests of heart, of courage, and of spirit. You have shown that humanity has the potential to become more than it is. Now, it is time for you to show the galaxy what you can do." Callum felt a surge of determination rise within him. He had faced down fears, overcome trials, and proven that humanity was capable of greatness. But this was the true test. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about leadership, about inspiring others, about making the hard decisions that would shape the future. "The galaxy will see what humanity can do," Callum said, his voice filled with resolve. "We will prove that we are worthy of a place among the stars." Arundel smiled, a rare and genuine smile that made her seem less like a distant queen and more like an ally. "I believe you, and I will help you." With a simple gesture, the stars above them seemed to shift. Callum felt a rush of energy flow through him, a new sense of purpose taking root deep inside him. It was as if the entire universe had opened up to him, offering both challenges and opportunities. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknowns, but Callum was ready to face whatever came next. As Arundel turned to leave, she spoke one final time. "The future of humanity is in your hands, Callum. Lead wisely, and the galaxy will follow." With those words, she disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving Callum standing alone in the vastness of the stars. He had done it. He had proven humanity's worth, and now the future was his to shape. But as the light of the stars shone down on him, Callum knew that this was only the beginning. There would be many challenges ahead, many obstacles to overcome, but he was no longer just a diplomat from Earth. He was a leader, a symbol of humanity's potential, and he was ready to take on whatever the galaxy had in store. He looked up at the stars, his heart filled with hope for the future. He had chosen to lead, and with that choice came the weight of responsibility. But Callum was not afraid. He knew that humanity was capable of greatness, and he would show the galaxy that humanity had just begun. The future was waiting, and Callum was ready to face it.